You know, in a world of quick shipping and on-demand everything, we can really quickly forget that it's not about today, but it's actually about tomorrow. Like, we live in a world where we can get everything on demand as fast as we want and as quickly as we want, and it's hard for us sometimes to think about the future because we're so caught up in the consumerism of the day. And Scripture talks about this idea about not just living for the moment, but living in a way that we have a future focus. We've been talking in this series, The Freedom of Enough, about this concept of less is more, stress is bad, generosity is good. And the reason all of those things are true is because we believe that tomorrow matters. And so if we don't start saying no to things like consumerism and materialism and debt, then we're never going to have the freedom to embrace the generosity that God has for us. And what we're going to do is we're going to consume everything that we have, and there'll be nothing for the next generation. I don't know about you, but I believe in the next generation. And I want to build an environment, a culture, a community, a church where we don't just care about the past or the moment, but we have vision for the future when it comes to our children and our grandchildren and our great-great-great-grandchildren. Fortunately, I have gotten to be around a group of people that are amazing, grandparents and great-grandparents, and in my wife's case, my grandkids have gotten to meet their great-great-grandparents, right? Like two greats. How cool is that to know that generationally you have people that are praying for you, that are caring for you, that have vision for you, to see you be successful and to have a hope and to have a future, to have people in your corner that have your back. And so the Bible reminds us that living simply for the moment will lead to regrets and constant struggle. And that when we invest financially and spiritually in what's ahead, we experience greater stability and purpose and identity. And this is so difficult for most of us because we believe that tomorrow matters, but we obviously don't know how to live like tomorrow matters. The most obvious place that you see it is that, like 76% of Americans are just simply living paycheck to paycheck. Now, you can blame that on the economy. You can blame that on the lack of a living wage. You can blame that on all kinds of things. But the truth of the matter is that we're living beyond our means. And it's our lack of ability to say no. It's our desire to say yes to so much stuff that we've created debt. And now we're a slave to the lender. And we can't be generous because we are owned by someone else. Our soul is owned by someone else. And I get it. Some of us have lower paying jobs or multiple kids, but the vast majority of us, the reason that we're living paycheck to paycheck is we don't have a firm grasp on our vision for tomorrow. And we're living our lives with no regard for tomorrow. But as Christ followers, we have to come to grips with the fact that the future matters. I mean, why are we doing all the things that we're doing if the future doesn't matter? And so we need to change our lives on how we live today if we truly are going to say that tomorrow matters. In Proverbs chapter 21, this is actually wisdom for the wealthy, right? So like if you want to get rich, if you want to become wealthy, and there's a difference between rich and wealthy, by the way. Rich is just a sum of money. Wealth is a mobilization and understanding and wise use of your money. And so in the book of wisdom, it's giving this wisdom for the wealthy, or how to become wealthy. The wise have wealth and luxury, but fools spend whatever they get. Wisdom for the paycheck to paycheck. So wisdom for the wealthy, it says like, hey, save, be responsible, right? But then the wisdom for those of you who are living paycheck to paycheck, it says, go to the ants, you sluggard. Go back up just a couple of verses. Consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer, no ruler, yet it stores provisions in the summer. It gathers food for harvest. And so both Proverbs 6 and Proverbs 21 both have this verbiage, this explanation. And Proverbs 6 paints a beautiful picture of the tomorrow matters. I mean, even the ant knows that you have to store up for the future. And so when we say tomorrow matters, it should change how we live today. So when it comes to our money, when it comes to our finances, and I know this is an awkward topic, and a lot of times people in church don't want to talk about it, but money is such a big part of the human experience, unfortunately, that we would be remiss if we didn't take the time to disciple on the topic of it. I mean, I spend time discipling you on love. I spend time discipling you on kindness. I spend time discipling you on how to be a better family member, a better spouse, I disciple you on how to keep in step with the Spirit. All of these things are part of the human experience, but for some reason in church circles, we don't want to talk about money because it's too awkward and too uncomfortable. And the reason it's awkward and uncomfortable is because we're not letting our money serve God. We're serving our money. And so when it comes to making money, ultimately, and we know this, there's two ways to make money. You make money, that's called a paycheck. People making money. And then there's this idea of making your money make money. This is the idea of investment. And so since today is about tomorrow matters, it would make sense for us to think about our generosity, to think about our finances, to think about our treasure in an investment style matter, like a future focused matter. And so let's talk about these sort of investment principles, right? I mean, if we're going to take wisdom from Proverbs, wisdom from the wealthy, look at chapter 24, verses 3 and 4. It talks about the idea of having an understanding of what needs to happen. In other words, don't invest in things you don't understand. By wisdom, a house is built, and through understanding, it is established. Through knowledge, its rooms are filled with rare and beautiful treasures. In other words, you don't just go to Home Depot and throw a bunch of building materials into a cart and then take them home and start building something in your backyard and hope it works out. You need a plan. And you need to have, that plan needs to be appropriate. And you need to make sure, am I going to be able to finish this project? Did I budget enough for it? You know, like this is that investment in our time, our talent, our treasure, our testimony, because I want this house to not just be a place that can, and sure, I could go to Home Depot. In fact, I could just go behind Home Depot and get a bunch of pallets and go buy a tarp from Harbor Freight, and it would keep the rain off of my family. But that's no way to really live. Isn't that why we go down to Mexico every year and build houses for the people that live in pallets and tarps? It's because it's not a life that's good. And so we try to give them security and safety and second chances. Why? Well, it takes understanding, it takes knowledge, it takes wisdom, and this is things that are future-minded. And so if I'm going to build a home that isn't just a place to keep my family safe, but a place to provide for my family for generations, then I'm going to have to invest in it. What do I mean by that? Well, there's lots of ways to invest, and we'll talk about those, right? I mean, sure, in the 90s, if you would have bought Lucent stock, you'd be a pretty big deal, but in the 90s, but in the 2000s, that Lucent stock is worth nothing. And mind you, in the 2025, you would have been better off buying $1,000 of Diet Coke at the grocery store. At least you would have had the Diet Coke to drink, and you could have recycled the cans, because $1,000 worth of Lucent stock today is worth pretty much nothing. When a stock crashes to pennies, you're left with nothing. And so your risk needs to be in perspective. In the same way that this Lucent stock in the 90s was such a hot commodity, it seemed like it was unstoppable until they weren't. And so whether it's Blockbusters or Sears or Lucent, those things have all kind of gone away, haven't they? And so if you don't have a clean understanding, if you don't have a deeper knowledge, if you don't have vision for the future, right now is probably not the time to invest in brick and mortar, because online is going crazy. And so the lesson is that there's no such thing as a sure bet. There's no such thing to quick money, and that you have to think about what you're doing and the way that you're doing it. And the best investment that you can make is investment into your family, investment into your people, investment into your church. I'll give you an example of it. Jennifer and I bought a house in the early 2000s, and honestly, we overpaid slightly for a modest home because of the housing market at the time. But part of the reason that we wanted to buy this house so badly was because it had a granny flat, a guest house attached to it. And we wanted to have this granny flat because we wanted to be able to invest in the future of our children and our grandchildren. And so each of our children have had an opportunity to live in the granny flat and to take the money that they would be paying rent and pay it into a savings account so that they could go and use that money to do something for their future to better their family. And sure, we could have bought a bigger house that was more, like audacious, but we bought a modest house that had an extra granny flat so that we could invest in the future of our families. We also bought it because we believed in the future that someday we might be so old that we can't work, and so we would have a place to live, that we would have a built-in income by renting out a portion of that house. Whether we rent the big side or the little side, we would have something. And so we've been investing in ourselves by buying this house. And so what we're doing in this is we're making an informed decision to make a wise investment in the future, not throwing our money after a meme stock because it's the hot thing right now. In other words, don't put all your eggs in one basket. If you're going to say tomorrow matters and I want to invest in the future, you can't bet it all on black, right? You can't be like one roulette roll and you'd be like, okay, I'm going to be a millionaire now. Ecclesiastes chapter 11 verse 2 says, but divide your investments among many places so that you know the risks that might lie ahead. You're like, I didn't know diversification of my portfolio was in the scriptures. It very much is. Diversification matters. A balanced portfolio in the way that you save and the way that you spend and the way that you invest is super important. And diversifying all of your generosity, your time, your talent, your treasure, your testimony is important. And so if you put $1,000, and in a few S&P 500 funds, you might not get rich quick, but you probably would outlast the rise and fall of any single company. And the real power of investing is often the patience and the consistency, not the short term or the hype. Stocks, businesses, real estates, commodities, these are all good, right? Think about it. Think about investing like this. It's like, you have to forgive me, but like I'm just a kid from the high desert. So I lived in Bakersfield, I lived in Bishop, and I come from a long line of farm families. My ancestors are farmers from South Dakota. And so every once in a while, the little cowboy in me sneaks up. But, Grandpa would have said it like this, we'll say manure. He didn't use this word. He said cow. Manure is great. It fertilizes the land. It makes the crops grow. But too much of it in one place really stinks. You got to spread it around. And so for the manure to do its job, you've got to spread it around. If you just leave it in a pile, it reeks. It's not beneficial when it's just in a big pile. And the same is true with the diversification of your portfolio. And again, you're like, Pastor, why are we talking about this? It's not very spiritual. Money is a very spiritual topic. Because if you're not careful, your money will rob you of your soul. And if you don't tell your money where to go, I guarantee you the devil will take your money and he will use it to make you a slave. But when you take control of your finances and you put God at the front end, when it comes to the tithes and the offerings, and then what's left, you're investing for the future to provide for the people that God's entrusted to you, you are being a wise, godly builder. And not only are you building the kingdom of heaven here on earth, but you're building family and longevity and legacy because you believe that tomorrow matters. Number 3, if you're taking notes, stop trying to get rich quick. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 9, Apostle Paul writing to Timothy says, those who want to get rich fall into temptation. It's a trap. into many foolish and harmful desires. They plunge people into ruin and distraction. Slow and steady beats the impulsive leaps every single time. Sometimes friends will come to us and be like, listen, I'm going to borrow $50,000 from my dad and I'm going to invest it in this overseas company and it's definitely a sure thing. You should get into it. You should get into it with me. I guarantee you it's not. That Nigerian prince is not going to give you your money back tenfold because his government has got a coup against him. You're being scammed. If it sounds too good to be true, it's because it is. The slow and steady, the thoughtful, the informed is the secret to financial future. Proverbs chapter 13, verse 11, dishonest money dwindles away, but whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. I mean, think of it like this. A marriage isn't perfect and wonderful overnight. It takes years and years and years of investment of time, talent, treasure, testimony, right? Story. It's about listening to each other's story, sharing in each other's story, giving of our time to one another, giving our affection to one another, supporting each other emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially. It doesn't happen overnight. It's like running a marathon. And so if you want to have a good marriage and you want to raise godly kids and it's about us having this abundance mindset that we put into practice because we believe in the future and we believe that future is for our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. And so we invest in them emotionally, spiritually, physically, and financially because we believe tomorrow matters. In other words, money plus consistency plus time creates generational wealth. It's just about you being patient. When my kids were little, I taught them the 30-70 premise. And when I say the 30-70 premise, what I mean by that is it's 10% of whatever you get, birthday money, everything. Whatever comes into your pocket, I taught my kids this, 10% is your tithe, 10% is your long-term savings, 10% and then 10% is your short-term savings, and then the 30%, the 70% is now what you would do with whatever you want. And so if you learn to live off 70%, remember, less is more, stress is bad, giving is good because tomorrow matters. If you get yourself to a place where you're living off of 70% of what comes into your household and you're tithing 10 and saving 10 and investing 10, your future would be bright and you would make a difference, not just in your life today, but in the future of your children and your grandchildren. Because again, money and consistency over time equals wealth. Look at all these verses from Ecclesiastes and Proverbs and 1 Timothy that we looked at today. This is a very godly concept, and yet we're so afraid to talk about it in church circles because it seems vulgar or it seems unspiritual. But you, being a good steward of your time, talent, treasure, and testimony, is discipleship. You have to think eternal, not just temporal. Our problem is that we think so short term. Jesus invested in people, not just profits, and our relationships are so much more important. Discipleship matters so much more than just riches and wealth. And so a healthy financial future means that you also leave a legacy of generosity and faith, but it means about relationships with people. It's not just money. It's about a holistic, whole attitude of abundant living, open-handed generosity. Why? Because less is more, and stress is bad, and generosity is good, and I believe tomorrow matters. And so maybe you've made some terrible financial decisions, and I want you to know something. That's just one chapter of your story. This isn't the end. And there still is time for you to use the debt snowball, and there still is time for you to put God first with your tithe, and there still is time for you to readjust your caliber of living and to disavow the scarcity mindset and to embrace abundant living. And so you want to be a great investor, not just so that you can become rich, but I want to invest in something that really matters. I want to invest in people. And so I use my money as a tool to leverage blessings into the lives of the people that God's entrusted to me. I want to be rich with my marriage and my children and my friends and my ministry. Sure, financial riches are great, but who blessed me to begin with? Who put the breath in my lungs and gave me the strength to build and make and do? Who put the creativity in my mind when he put me together in the womb of my mother? And so I put him first in my time, and I put him first in my prayers, and I put him first in the way that I process my information, and the way that I organize my life, and the way that I spend my money. Why? Because my finances is a discipleship thing. And this is not a sermon about your wallet. This is a sermon about your heart. And so I want my heart to be in line with Jesus. And so to do so, I can't be a lover of money. I have to be a lover of God. I mean, granted, the love of money is the root of all evil. Not money, the love of money. The focus on it is the answer when Jesus is the answer. God, would you help us? Would you help us to focus beyond the present, even though it's tempting to just be so focused on today and to live in the moment, that we would see the future as something worth investing in? Teach us to make a plan and work that plan, that wise plan to invest in what truly matters, to trust you, to lead us into the future, and help us to avoid the shortcuts and the get-quick-rich schemes, and guide us into steady, faithful decisions, both financially and spiritually and familially. Lord, may our investments reflect your values, and may we build a legacy that honors you and provides for the future of our families. In your name we pray. Amen.